All right, next video in our UR5E Cobot series. Colin, Isaac, you have showed us a lot of really cool stuff we can do with this robot to get it to start operating at a basic level. Let's start getting a little more advanced. Let's talk about the idea of palletizing, since that's a very common use for automated robotic arms like this, like stacking things or moving things around, truly palletizing them so that they could be like shipped out at a factory or something like that. So yeah, just walk me through the process.
So with palletizing, you could just try and program every single waypoint, but here in the program tab, as you can see, we have these four. If you go into templates, there's a palletizing template already. So we're going to select palletizing because we're trying to put it into a pallet.
And this is our little pallet area here.
Yeah.
And we're going to assume that while we don't have a conveyor belt or anything, we're going to imagine a scenario where a conveyor belt is consistently putting a piece here, kind of like if you go to the grocery store and you put your groceries on it, they run forward, a laser catches it, senses it, stops it, it sits here until it's picked up and moved, and then another one comes down the line.
So when you go into the palletizing program, you select either you want palletizing or depalletizing, and that'll change what it does. So if you do depalletizing, it's already going to be in a pallet. You just remove the pieces and just move them somewhere else, but we're trying to get them to move from here to a pallet. So first thing to do is you're going to set the object height, because it's going to assume that you have objects of the same size. And so we have 4 of these little inch cubes, and so it goes in millimeters, so about 25 millimeters.
So we want to be precise though, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you do this, also set up an add action after palletizing, so that when it's done, we can just tell it to stop. But going back into it, we're going to go into the patterns part. We're going to select a grid.
And this is just among options. Like we could have it palletized in any of these ways.
Separations. And so it wants to know how many rows there are. So we're going to say, because we only have 4 pieces, we're going to say there's 2 and 2. Otherwise you could have like 4 this way, 3 that way, whatever you want. So we're going to set our first corner. And so that's why I have one of these blocks already set up into it, in the gripper. So we can come down and we can set corner 1.
And also just one thing I want to add to what you're doing, Colin, because this is all really good. Oh, can you go back to that screen for a second? If you wanted to, if you were trying to be like super precise about where you want that to be, you can make little changes by using these buttons here like we saw in our first video.
So corner 2, will be just in the other corner. We set that. Corner 3, and then the last item and then we're just going to say that there is 1 layer by selecting grid pattern 1.
Because we're not stacking like
multiple layers.
Yeah, we're not doing 4 corners, then 4 more on top of that, then 4 more on top of that.
Right.
And so we have to set up the wizard. So,
And that is what it calls it.
so that is exactly what it calls it. So we're going to go into at each item, click next. It's going to have you move to the first reference point. And then we're going to click next. And so it's going to ask us to set the approach position. This is where it's going to just approach from. So we're just going to say
a bit higher than.
And well, let's try and be like as efficient as we can here, because like let's say we lift this an extra ½ inch more than we need to. Mm-hmm. We just spent an extra, let's say, 1/5 of 1 second, right, to do that.
Yeah.
But if you start doing that in systems that are automated and doing things potentially millions of times in a row that actually can lead to like tiny inefficiencies that lead up to like a lot of lost time and therefore like labor and cost of living for the consumer. So
you don't want it to be super high, but just
high enough that it would clear
Yeah.
the object after it has palletized it.
So
Okay, so you're just kind of moving it to your spot there.
we want it to be kind of in line as well. Okay, and then it's going to ask us to again move down to the reference point, and then we set the exit waypoint, which we can just do the exact same thing as the approach waypoint. Just slightly up. Next, each thing is done. So, very important to do, because if you don't do this, it's just going to move in the pallet. So
And knock all your stuff everywhere.
Add a move. Hold on. Add a move function. Move that up. So it's going.
Can you show me how you move that up?
So it's going to immediately be at the bottom when you add it, and so if you just press this arrow while you're on it, then it's going to just select it.
And all these, but you can do all kinds of things like that. Like if you wanted to cut it and then paste it, you could use those functions as well.
So again, we're going to do move L, and so we are going to set waypoint 1, and we are going to actually set that just a little bit higher, and kind of, just a little bit higher. That way we don't run into anything really. And then we're going to move to waypoint 2. We're going to say that this item starts here. Actually, before you move to waypoint 2, make sure that the gripper is open. Then at waypoint 2, we're going to simply add a little half-second wait just to make sure. And we do that by tapping the wait button.
And what's that going to do for us? Making sure that it doesn't dump the block off before it's finished moving.
And then we do waypoint close. So we're going to come here, tool action, and this is at each point, and we're just going to do gripper open. And then theoretically, if we run the program, so it's going to open that up. Kind of moved it, but as you can see,
it's only moving to the same spot each time. Okay, there we go. Now I noticed it went to that first waypoint twice, Colin.
Yeah, so that's the one waypoint that's not a part of the palette, and that's just the, hey, kind of raise up. But as you can see, we had it a little bit too small of a palette.
Yeah, tight area. So just by being off by a little bit the way we set it up, we did incur an impact, but this is a good chance to like see something cool about this robot too. So like a lot of robots aren't able to do this, what's called a protective stop. So this robot actually senses that it made an impact there and it stops. A lot of robots will just keep going and like hurt itself or hurt the table or even worse, hurt a person. So this is a good feature. So whenever this happens, what do we need to do?
We just press enable robot. But as you can see from there, we can simply go back in, and then we can just set each corner to just be at a different position.
So they're a little further apart.
Yeah. So we're going to set this actually to
On the tape.
the very edge of the tape. So that's 1. Set item 2. I'm going to set that there. 3. And we're using the feature of the base, and that allows us to better
Move
rotate
exactly
it
where we
instead
want.
of the feature of the item. Just makes everything easier.
And I even noticed, well, I'll show the viewer here in a second. I noticed that it selects and shows you which one you're,
Yeah.
yep. It moves corners as you choose different
And we're actually gonna
palletization
set-
locations.
We're going to reset this waypoint, and we're actually just going to set that as higher. Instead of directly above here, so it does not run into an item as it comes through. So then I'm just going to open the gripper and the installation tab. Go back into run. It's going to move to the first waypoint. We're going to set our first piece at our waypoint.
Here I can be conveyor
Press
person.
run program.
Awesome. Great job, guys. Next, we'll get into some additional features we can add to make this program a little more complex so that it can do some additional cool things.